Let's talk about the Kafala system, a word that might sound like a coffee brand, but is actually a legal framework shaping the lives of millions of migrant workers in the Middle East. It's a term you might have heard in the news, especially when stories about labor rights or big construction projects come up. But what does it really mean? The Kafala system is a set of laws and customs that govern how foreign workers are brought into countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Jordan, and Lebanon, places famous for their rapid transformation and futuristic skylines. These countries have grown at lightning speed, and much of that growth has depended on migrant labor. But behind the glitz and glamour, it's migrant workers from countries like Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Pakistan, and the Philippines who build and maintain these cities. They are the invisible force powering the region's economic miracle, often working long hours in tough conditions. Kafala means sponsorship in Arabic. Under this system, a worker's immigration status is tied directly to their employer, known as the kafil. This sponsor is responsible for the worker's visa, legal status, and even their ability to change jobs or leave the country. Unlike a typical work visa, your right to stay, work, or even leave the country is controlled by your boss. This means that if you lose your job or want to switch employers, you often need your sponsor's permission, sometimes even just to return home. For many, this creates a situation where workers are dependent on their employers for almost everything. Passports are sometimes confiscated, and workers can find themselves trapped, unable to leave or seek help if things go wrong. Originally, Kafala was meant to manage temporary labor for big projects, but over time, it's become a tool for control and, in many cases, exploitation. The system has evolved far beyond its original purpose, and now affects nearly every aspect of a migrant worker's life. Human rights groups call it a system ripe for abuse, sometimes even modern-day slavery. Stories of unpaid wages, unsafe living conditions, and lack of legal protection are all too common. In some Gulf countries, migrant workers make up over 90% of the private workforce. They build stadiums, clean hotels, care for children, and keep the cities running. Yet their contributions often go unrecognized. They drive taxis, cook meals, and provide essential services, but remain largely invisible and vulnerable to exploitation, with few avenues for justice or support. The Kafala system can strip workers of basic freedoms, making their daily reality a tightrope walk between opportunity and oppression. For many, the dream of a better life comes at a steep personal cost. This isn't just policy, it's the lived experience of millions. Every day, workers navigate a system that can offer hope, but also hardship and uncertainty. So what does this system actually look like in practice? Let's break it down and see how it shapes the lives of those at its heart. Imagine you're a worker from Nepal, lured by promises of a good job in the Gulf. You dream of earning enough to support your family, maybe even save for your children's education or build a home. The advertisements and recruiters make it sound like a golden opportunity, a chance to change your life for the better. But before you even set foot on the plane, you're forced to pay huge recruitment fees, sometimes several months' worth of wages. Many workers borrow money at high interest rates, plunging themselves into debt before they even leave home. The pressure to succeed is immense, because your family is counting on you. Once you land, your sponsor takes control, sometimes literally taking your passport the moment you arrive. This is your first taste of how little control you'll have over your own life. The excuse is always for safekeeping, but in reality, it's about power. Without your passport, you can't leave your job, travel freely, or even return home if things go wrong. Want to change jobs? You need a no-objection certificate from your employer, who has no incentive to let you go, even if you're being mistreated or underpaid. If you leave without permission, you're reported as an absconder. Overnight, you become an illegal worker, constantly at risk of arrest, detention, and deportation. In some countries, you even need your employer's written permission to leave the country, an exit permit. Without it, you're stuck, no matter the circumstances. Even if you're sick, injured, or facing a family emergency back home, you can't go unless your boss agrees. Your life is on hold, and your family suffers too. Employers use this power to force longer hours, cut wages, or silence any complaints. Speaking up can mean losing your job, or worse, your freedom. The system isn't about managing labor. It's about containing people, restricting their movement, and keeping them under constant watch. For many, Kafala is a trap: debt, confiscated documents, and no way out. The dream of a better life quickly turns into a nightmare. It's a system designed to keep workers powerless, isolated, and dependent on their employers for every basic right. The rules are clear. Your freedom, your future, and your dignity all depend on your employer's goodwill. And that's where the real problems begin, when a system built on control leaves workers with nowhere to turn. Give one person total power over another, and abuse is almost inevitable. Wage theft is rampant. Contracts are changed, salaries slashed, or payments withheld entirely. With passports confiscated, workers can't leave or seek help. Construction workers endure brutal hours in dangerous conditions, often living in overcrowded, unsanitary camps. Many have died building the Gulf's iconic landmarks, their stories lost behind the headlines. Domestic workers, mostly women, face even worse. Isolation, no days off, and frequent abuse, physical, psychological, and sexual. Their workplace is a private home, shielded from oversight. The Kafala system dehumanizes workers, treating them as property, not people. Speaking up risks jail, deportation, or worse, so most suffer in silence. It's not just a few bad employers, it's a system that enables abuse. To truly grasp Kafala's impact, we need to look beyond statistics and policies, at the real stories of those living under its shadow. Rajiul Hassan Rubel, a Bangladeshi worker in the UAE, found himself trapped in a low-paying job despite promised reforms. He left his home and family, hoping for a better life, but soon realized the promises made to him were empty. The system kept him stuck, his skills wasted, unable to change jobs or improve his situation without his sponsor's permission. Lenza, an Ethiopian domestic worker in Lebanon, was filmed desperately escaping abuse. Her harrowing flight from her employer's home was a cry for help that resonated worldwide. Her story went viral, but for every Lenza, there are countless others who suffer in silence, their pain hidden behind closed doors. Many die under mysterious circumstances, their families left with no answers, only grief and uncertainty about what really happened so far from home. Not every story is a horror story. Some workers finish contracts and return home better off, able to support their families and build new dreams. Defenders of Kafala point to these cases as proof the system can work, highlighting moments of genuine connection and opportunity. But a system's worth is measured by how it treats the most vulnerable, not just the luckiest or most fortunate. Relying on a good sponsor shouldn't be a lottery for basic rights. No one's dignity should depend on the whims of another. The real problem is the power imbalance at Kafala's core, where employers hold all the cards and workers have little recourse. When your safety and dignity depend on your boss's mood, the system is broken, and abuse becomes almost inevitable. Positive stories don't erase the suffering of thousands. For every smile, there are tears that go unseen. The structure itself enables abuse, trapping workers in cycles of dependency and fear. For too many, Kafala is a loaded gun pointed at their future, a system that demands urgent change for the sake of human dignity. So why does Kafala persist? Defenders cite economics, tradition, and security. Gulf economies rely on cheap, reliable labor for rapid development. Kafala gives employers control and stability. They argue that without it, projects would stall and costs would rise. Culturally, sponsorship is rooted in tradition, locals vouching for foreigners. But this has morphed into a tool for labor control. Some fear that loosening restrictions would threaten national identity or security. Governments claim Kafala helps monitor a huge foreign workforce, preventing crime and undocumented migration. Critics call these excuses for exploitation, but for those in power, control is the priority. The system is deeply embedded in both the economy and society. That's why change is so hard. Under international pressure, some Gulf countries have announced reforms. Qatar, ahead of the 2022 World Cup, claimed to abolish Kafala, allowing job changes and exit without employer permission, at least on paper. Saudi Arabia introduced its own reforms, letting some workers switch jobs and leave without exit permits. These moves were hailed as progress, part of broader modernization efforts. But the reality is messier. Many reforms exclude domestic workers, the most vulnerable group. Even where laws change, enforcement is weak. Employers retaliate, withhold pay, or create bureaucratic obstacles. In Lebanon, a promising reform was blocked by recruitment agencies. Headlines may announce the end of Kafala, but the DNA of control remains. For many workers, little has changed. Real reform is slow, uneven, and often more about image than substance. The fight is far from over. Just as progress seems possible, setbacks happen, like in Kuwait. In 2025, Kuwait reinstated the exit permit requirement for all migrant workers. This move hands employers the power to trap workers, even after contracts end or abuse occurs. Human Rights Watch condemned it as a violation of basic rights. The government claims it's about protecting employers, but it ignores the massive power imbalance. Instead of fair dispute resolution, Kuwait doubled down on employer control. This reversal shows how fragile reforms are and how quickly rights can be lost. Without real commitment, Kafala's grip endures. Why is Kafala so hard to abolish? The answer: money, prejudice, and politics. Gulf economies depend on cheap, disposable labor. Businesses profit and resist change. Social hierarchies and racism reinforce the system. Migrant workers are seen as a lower class. Legal protections are weak. Workers face daunting, biased systems if they complain. Sending countries rely on remittances and hesitate to push for reform, fearing job losses for their citizens. Without collective action or international pressure, Gulf states have little incentive to change. Dismantling Kafala means challenging deep economic and social structures. It's not just about laws, it's about changing attitudes. And that's a long uphill battle. Is Kafala a blessing or a curse? Let's be clear, it's a curse. Some workers succeed, but that doesn't redeem the system. Kafala is built on control, stripping workers of agency and exposing them to abuse. The supposed economic benefits come at a huge human cost. Reforms are often superficial, easily reversed, and poorly enforced. Human rights groups say the answer isn't reform, it's abolition. Workers' visas should be tied to their profession, not a specific employer. All workers, including domestic workers, must be protected by law. Legal systems must be fair and accessible, with real penalties for abuse. The question is moral. Can prosperity justify systemic oppression? The answer must be no. Kafala is a relic that must be dismantled until every worker's freedom and dignity are restored.